Hi Archers! Today we'll be having a look at our Archer hero Sylvan. I'll be guiding you through all of his stats, pros and cons, the best gear and the best abilities, all specifically for Sylvan, and conclude if he's worth the expensive price tag. We'll also be comparing Sylvan's damage to other heroes such as Helix and Meowgic. My name is Teeds. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe and click the bell for more Archero videos. A disclaimer, this is based on my experience, research and opinion. ARCHERO does not release its numbers, therefore we have to figure out a lot of the stats ourselves. Sylvan is very number heavy, so I will be basing this guide off my own research. With that, let's begin with Sylvan. First, everything you need to know about Sylvan. Sylvan cost me 28 Australian dollars, which is around 18 euros or 19 USD. He is quite expensive, the most expensive hero by far. Sylvan's special skill is when attacking, there's a chance to trigger a random powerful effect. These effects consist of freeze that freezes the target, fire that burns the target dealing tick damage, lightning that deals initial damage to the target and any mob nearby that target, and poison that deals damage over time until the target is dead. The description is a little misleading or worded weirdly. Even though it says a chance to trigger a random effect, you actually always trigger an effect. This was one of the reasons why I originally thought Sylvan wasn't that strong in my first impressions. However, triggering an effect every attack is a whole different story. He has a base health of 600 max HP and 160 attack. Because his ability is based off 4 elemental arrows, this takes away Bolt, Freeze, Blaze, and Poison Touch from the ability pool. Sylvan's universal stats grants plus 200 max HP and plus 5% attack to all heroes at level 20 and level 60. Sylvan's personal stats grant plus 20% damage to ranged units and plus 6% max HP at level 40 and level 80. Now let's go through his stats and damage numbers and compare these numbers to Meowgic and Helix. We are using Meowgic and Helix for this study as these two heroes are accessible for both free-to-play and paying players and are both very strong. I went frame by frame and counted hundreds of arrows to determine the chance proc of each element. This took me a very long time, but it was very simple to do. Depending on the weapon you're using, you can actually see the effect on the arrow before it hits the enemy. From my research, the proc chance was 35% for both lightning and fire, and 15% for both poison and freeze. Remember, these numbers are based off my test. They may not be 100% accurate, but should be very close. So the chance to proc lightning or fire is more than twice as high as a freeze or poison. For Sylvan's lightning, the initial hit deals 68% of your base damage, and any mob nearby the initial target will take 25% of your base damage. This deals the same as bolt arrow to nearby targets, but the difference is that the bolt arrow does not have any initial damage. This element does scale with attack boost, multi-shot front arrow, etc. and does not scale with rage. For Sylvan's fire, deals 35% of your base damage over 6 fast ticks. Reapplying the effect will refresh it and it does not scale. This deals 15% more damage than a normal blaze but has 1 less tick. For Sylvan's poison, deals 80% of your base damage and ticks once every 30 seconds. This is 50% more than a normal poison touch and is half a second faster. For Sylvan's freeze versus normal freeze, there is no damage on either. However, it seems that normal freeze is stronger than Sylvan's freeze. The normal freeze is said to freeze targets for 2 seconds, while Sylvan's only freezes targets for almost half a second. Now let's compare the damage numbers to Meowgic and Helix. I calculated the damage for 2 weapons, the bow with a 100% modifier and the scythe with a 145% modifier. I calculate the average damage per hit, so it can be higher or lower, but this is the average for Sylvan. The average factors in fire, lightning, and ice. The damage per hit for the bow is 3,692, while the scythe is 4,451 per hit. So as you can see per hit, the scythe does deal more, but that's just per hit. Let's go to DPS. DPS stands for damage per second. These numbers do not include crit damage and crit chance. With the bow, Helix's DPS at 50% health is 4,617. Meowgic's DPS is 5,990. Sylvan with the bow, without poison, is 6,270. Because poison has a lower proc chance, I decided to do 2 different calculations in case poison doesn't proc. But with poison, the DPS with the bow is 7,739 per second. That is a huge leap in DPS with Sylvan in comparison to Meowgic and Helix. With the Scythe, Meowgic still deals more than Sylvan if there is no poison proc at 6,365. However, you're very likely going to proc poison. So with Meowgic, the DPS on Scythe is 7,178, while Sylvan is higher with 7,834. With that, it concludes that Sylvan is a lot better against bosses than Meowgic and Helix at 50% health. These calculations also do not include Sylvan's level 40 personal stat of plus 20% damage to ranged mobs, so he is a lot stronger against ranged enemies. Another big difference with Sylvan here is that the bow does a lot less DPS than the Scythe. So earlier I did compare the bow's damage per hit to the Scythe's damage per hit, but it's a different story if it's damage per second. Here are the numbers side by side, so as you can see, the damage per hit has a much bigger gap. However, the damage per second between the bow and the Scythe, the bow is actually extremely close to the Scythe in terms of raw DPS. So in conclusion, with the damage aspect, Sylvan is very expensive, and personally, if I didn't have to do any testings and such, I would not buy Sylvan because $28 is a lot of money for a hero. Meowgic and Helix both still do the job. However, if you're a player who wants to invest into a hero, whether it's paid or not, Sylvan is stronger than Helix and Meowgic. Next, the pros and cons of Sylvan. First, the pros. Sylvan's special is based off 4 abilities in the game, so that means he removes 4 abilities from the pool. In turn, you have a higher chance of picking up a strong tier ability. He has the highest DPS raw damage wise. His special consists of damage and crowd control from the freeze. In my opinion, I would say he is the best boss killer. Despite stating the special ability has a chance to proc, it is actually a 100% elemental proc rate. Next, the cons. Unlike Meowgic and Helix, his special ability, except for lightning, does not scale with anything. He is the most expensive hero on ARCHERO at the moment. He can lose a little bit of DPS with his fire. The Scythe actually negates it a little, but the fire does refresh, which means instead of having the full ticks, you will get the amount of ticks before the next refresh. His special does not include the Dark Touch Elemental Arrow ability. Next, the best gear. I would say Sylvan is pretty flexible in that regard, but the faster the weapon, the better for Sylvan in my opinion. But because the staff has a specific ability build, I would say Sylvan is best on the staff because every arrow from multiple arrows, so multi-shot, diagonal arrows, etc., they will all proc an element. Staff is probably the strongest for Sylvan. Spear is also extremely good as well due to the instant projectile hit, but it depends if you value knockback or not for that weapon. But in the end, all weapons seem to work very well on him, it's just up to you and your playstyle. With item builds, I suggest either the dodge build with the Vessel Dexterity and 2 Serpent Rings. The nice thing about the Serpent Rings is that it also deals more damage to ranged enemies, which stacks nicely with his level 40 personal stat of plus 20% damage to ranged enemies. Another build you can do for damage is the crit build with 2 Wolf Rings, or you can do a mix of Serpent and Wolf. Lastly, the best abilities for Sylvan. Your top tier abilities as usual. Multi-shot is a very strong ability and the element will proc on each arrow. Ricochet is extremely good on Sylvan as it will proc on every enemy hit by the ricochet. Diagonal walls and bouncy wall and other multiple arrows will apply the effect on all enemy hits as well. Sylvan is pretty flexible with abilities and it's really nice that he has less chance to get a bad ability. I would say just refer to my general tier list, but other than that, there isn't really anything special that I have to mention about ability choices except that his special ability will proc on every arrow thrown by Sylvan. And to answer some questions, as I know some of you might ask if I will be using Sylvan since he seems to be the strongest hero at the moment. I will not be using Sylvan, I will stick to either Meowgic or Helix. I kind of switch between the two depending how I'm feeling, but with Sylvan, because he's a very expensive hero, I think it wouldn't be fair to make guides with a very strong hero that you have to pay for. And if you want to know if you should buy Sylvan, that is entirely up to you. If you think that his stats are worth the high price tag, then go for it. He is a very strong hero and he is, in at least numbers wise, is stronger than Helix and Meowchick. That is all for today's video. I thank you very much for watching. It's music/comments time. Hey Caleb, thank you so much. I've been there and this game is addicting. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Lorenzo, Vismara, I don't know how I feel about that, but I guess it could be interesting. I do like the ability, but I feel like it would lack as a special. And as always, thank you everyone for commenting and liking my videos. Feel free to subscribe and click the bell for more Archero content. Let me know in the comments how you feel about Sylvan. Any likes would be super appreciated. I hope to see you again for the next one. Bye!